Hey everyone, I just thought I'd try something fun and see if I could shoot like a mini training video based on the information that's in the ebook and try to make some of the information just immediately applicable to your lives so that when you're working with your own kids or kids in the classroom, this stuff can help you. What I want to talk about, it's basically the neurology of what's going on when people go through escalation and the amygdala lights up and the fight or flight turns on and all that whole process and how it affects us as we interact with kids or with other people that go through that process. So what I want to start with is, for all you visual learners, is a little mini drawing of basically what the worksheet looks like in the workbook. And in the workbook, it's much more detailed and there's a process so that you have ways to identify where somebody is and then actions to take to help them maintain their emotional stability or to bring them back down into emotional baseline so you don't accidentally trigger further escalation. And really over the long haul, so that you help people identify what emotional baseline feels like, and that through interactions that are consistent and predictable, that you can grow their tolerance and actually grow their challenge that they can face throughout their day and still maintain an emotional baseline. So this is kind of what it looks like here. It's a little mini pencil drawing of it, and what I want to just show really quick is this area in here that has a wavy line. That represents our emotional baseline, or when we have our emotions under control. And basically the reason there's a wavy line and there's an up and down is that each of us has a range of emotion within norm that might be more excitable or more boisterous or more energetic or more subdued, calm, reflective, but it's all within an emotional norm. And the reason that matters is because when we're in our emotional baseline, that's the only time that we have the full capacity of our cognitive ability, our ability to modulate emotions, our ability to have impulse control, our ability to reflect, to problem solve, to learn new things, to understand that what I choose to do now is going to affect what happens later. All that stuff happens when we have our full cognitive abilities. And as we move away from that norm, then we move away from being able to process that kind of information and we move into closer to fight or flight, which is, it makes sense because our brains are set up to help us survive. And, they're constantly on monitoring for, is there a problem? What do I have to do to solve that problem? And how do I come out of this so that I have the best potential to survive and thrive? And that's just how we're built. So essentially what's going on is our brains are monitoring, and the way they're set up, they filter. You can think of it as like a filter, and they filter information as it comes through. And before the information gets to the thinking brain, it's got to go through the emotional brain. And the emotional brain decides, is this something that we have to stop and deal with right now, or can I allow this to pass through? I may assign emotions to it, but can I allow it pass through because it's safe enough where we can have time to reflect and make decisions about and learn from and do more complex processing about it. And so when we're interacting with kids, it's really important for us to identify, are they in their emotional norm or not? And if they're not, there's really no point in doing anything besides helping them pull themselves back down into that emotional norm before we move on. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to process what we're talking about. We're not going to be able to have a discussion. It's very likely they're not going to learn from what's going on in the moment. And the more emotional they are, the less likely they are to connect their actions now with future outcomes. Okay, and so let's talk about the first area here. If challenge is happening during the day, at some point we end up at this first spot, which is where we become triggered by things, and it's a healthy spot. It's a place where challenge comes into play, and we grow from that area. But in interacting with somebody, what we want to be sure is we want to be watching for those signs of being triggered. Are their voice patterns changing? Do they have more concerned look on their face? Are they getting a little more agitated as we talk? And if that's happening, that's fine. We just want to be aware that that's happening. They look a little agitated. And again, if we just default to the brain's looking for safe, consistent, predictable, then we can help them feel safe. An example might be, hey, I see that you're getting a little agitated and you're still engaged in the conversation, and you're showing a lot of courage, and you're showing me that you're willing to dive into this, even though it looks like it might be a difficult challenge for you. Or I see that you're thinking about this, and it looks like you're being reflective and you're sticking with me. And it might be a little bit challenging to talk about this, but here we are. So basically you're just trying to feed the person with whatever kind of signals might work for them to help them maintain a feeling of safety, because at the point of being triggered, our brain is knocking on the door of emotions and saying, hey, beware. There's stuff going on, and you're going to need to measure this so that we can figure out if it's a safety issue or not. And if it is, you're taking over. And so that brings us to the next area, and that would be if you're past being triggered and you're up here in, and you're actually escalated and your emotions are starting to take over. That means your cognition is starting to shut off, and it's emotional time, and it's time for the body to react in ways to keep it safe. It's no longer trying to figure out if it's safe. It's decided there's a problem that needs immediate attention. And immediate attention means any kind of talk that we do as adults to help kids through something, and we start talking about, if you do this later tonight, you're not going to have that privilege, or in the classroom, you might lose recess, or your grades may fail, or any kind of future kind of stuff starts to matter a lot less when emotions take over. When emotions take over, it's much more about what's right now and right now. What am I doing right now, and what does it get me right now? And so like before, when you notice that people are getting triggered, you want to be pretty supportive and negotiate and work with them to solve their problem. But if you see a change from being triggered to being like defensive or lashing out or good signs of frustration, or I'm really mad, or whatever signs you may get from the person that you're working with, the more you talk and the more you try to still be supportive and negotiate, which was the right thing to do when they were triggered, it's the wrong thing to do when they're escalated. And the more you talk and the more supportive you try to be, and the more interaction you give them, the more you're just going to escalate them. It's not what they need. They need less talk. I call it minimal effective interaction. So I want to offer you a choice and pull the plug. Sometimes it's a nonverbal choice. Sometimes, with my kids, I've been doing this kind of stuff a long time, and they know that if they get to a place where I see a lot of lashing out, or no, I don't want to, or that's stupid, or just, total shutdown frustration, I will just pull the plug. I'm not going to look at them. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm not going to be around them, because the choice is, if you're acting that way, you're not getting me. And when you're done, you will get me. But essentially, that's what you need to do. Is in this case, you want to offer a choice. Minimal effective interaction means, in as few words as I can, state the choice, and then I'm gone. I'm not going to continue to try to feed and continue to escalate that individual. Really hard for adults to do at this point. As kids get escalated, we have other parts of our brains that help us socialize, mirror neurons. It helps us be empathetic. And we tend to, as kids escalate, we tend to escalate with them. And so as we start to escalate, it's hard for us to disengage. It's hard for us to make good decisions. And it's hard for us because our emotions are getting triggered. And then we have, really fun stuff up here. When kids go into crisis, and crisis goes up and down and can go for a long time and can get more intense and less intense. But let me just give you simple rules. So it's basically the same rules that you have once you've given a choice and you unplug. If you see someone in crisis, or you get a kid that you're working with that ends up getting into crisis, the best thing you can do is stop giving the input. Don't give them any verbal interaction. Don't tell them, you shouldn't be yelling, you shouldn't be hitting, you shouldn't be kicking, you shouldn't be running. Of course, all those rules apply, but any kind of talk, any kind of eye contact, any kind of proximity, waiting for them to respond, standing over them until they do what you say. Go ahead if you want to. If you like crisis, that's how you get it to be bigger, and that's how you get it to be longer. So if you want to have a bigger, longer crisis, now you know. Talk to them, look at them, and be near them the whole time. I personally want to shorten it as much as I can, and for the health of the child and health of me, because I'm probably super escalated at this point, the best thing I can do is remove myself. Another trick I use to help people do this is it's time to engage with others. You really want to, if you have that nervous energy of, God, I want to do something about this, I'm really frustrated, this is a situation I don't like. Classroom settings especially, I talk to teachers about this. Move your attention immediately to the peers. Work with the peers. Be transparent about it. Let the peers know you're doing a great job. You're honoring your peers so well by not looking at them, by not talking to them, by not facing them. You're moving your body away, or you're moving your whole body across the room to get away from them. That's so helpful. It's going to help you calm down. It's going to help the peers feel safe, because remember, you're escalated. The person you're working with is escalated, so is everybody else. And so to get them and manage them to get back down to baseline and feel safe and feel like the adult in the situation can handle this and has total control is awesome. And then basically the rules for non-engagement apply all the way past the crisis area, down through recovery and back to baseline. And you really don't want to engage again until you see an emotionally regulated individual. There is an exception to that rule. I talk about it more in the book. It has to do with self-regulation skills and co-regulation, and again, much more in depth and in detail in the book. But I wanted to give you a quick, really some usable information that you might be able to turn around and use today. In review, we talked about emotional baseline is where people have their full cognitive capacity. That's where you want to do all your interaction, all your explanation of rules, new learning, all that kind of process. Up here when they're getting triggered, that's where you want to be supportive and negotiate and understand that they can still talk and think, but it's time to start to be supportive and help them feel safe so it doesn't flip the emotional switch. Once the emotional switch is flipped and they're at escalation, it is time to do minimal effective interaction. I want to say as little as possible. I want to tell you what I need, and then I want to be done with the situation so that I can allow you the time to make a choice. And it's the best potential. If I do that, you have the best potential, and I have the best potential to help you to come back down. You may not come back down. You may continue to escalate. If you do continue to escalate, the best thing I can do is remain once removed. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to stare at you. I don't want to get close to you. And I want to support myself in continuing to not do anything that might escalate you further. And I want to attend to anybody else, siblings, spouses, or at school, other peers, administrators, other teachers, anyone else around, to really honor them in supporting this process happening and allowing that person all the time and space they need to come all the way back down to baseline again before we interact. And that predictable and consistent pattern of, when I'm feeling good, people interact with me, and it's really normal and fun and entertaining and engaging. And when I'm triggered, people are very supportive. But when I get escalated, people just give me a choice and give me time and space, and I get to go through whatever I need to go through. And when I get back to my baseline again, or when I get back to feeling good again, then people come around and they're supportive again, and we get to work and engage. And that pattern over time is what's going to heal that brain and help people actually have more tolerance within their range of normal emotional baseline, and tolerate more challenge without flipping the switch to emotions. So I hope that helped. That's a longer video than I normally give, but I really wanted to just kind of give a quick breakdown. I go way more into the neurology side of it in the ebook, and I hope this was helpful, and I hope you can turn around today, and when you come into conflict with someone, you remember this process of, be supportive unless they start to get escalated. If they're escalated, offer minimal effective interaction, a choice, and then remove yourself, and then wait until they're back to baseline before you engage, and that you see some success from this, and that it's helpful to you. All right. Thanks a lot for watching. More videos to come. This one was fun. I hope it was helpful. Have a great day.